Hi, Elisa Goodwin Snell.
Hello,
You look
everybody.
wonderful as usual. Okay, so I got a doozy of a letter, and we have to cover this. You've still got to cover it in your 10 minutes or less.
Okay.
But I'm sure whatever you can't cover. This guy just needs your help, and I thought that it was a really good, candid question, and it's a hard answer. So let's give it to the nation's #1 dating and relationship expert, shall we?
Sounds good. I'm up for the challenge.
All right. He says, "Dear lasting love dating expert." Isn't that nice? He even starts it out right. He says, "I finally found a great girl for me. We have so much in common. She's beautiful, funny, sensitive, and she loves the Lord. I feel like a better person when we're together. We've been dating for more than 6 months. We've both watched ourselves when we're together so that we don't go too far. But lately I've been really confused. It seems like every time we're kissing and getting caught up in the heat of the moment, she pushes me to go further. I've never dated a girl who's done that. Even the way she talks when we're together is out of character for her. Sometimes it's like hearing the script from an X-rated movie. I don't want to offend her, but it's a turnoff to me as I'm looking for someone who has self-control so that I can have a better confidence if we get married that she won't cheat on me. I don't know what to say to her to explain myself or to get her to change her behavior. I don't want to lose her, but this isn't a side of her that I like. Help. Sincerely, Down and Dirty."
So I like this one. So the problem is some guys are like, what's the problem? Right. And there's probably some people who are like, why aren't they having sex? You know what I mean? So I want to comment on that real quick. So in my work, I found, we have a very sexualized culture. And so there's this media portrayal of everybody having sex, and that's the goal. And in some, in the general mainstream of dating culture, maybe that's the case in some ways, but people forget that there are some very, there are a lot of subcultures, religious and conservative subcultures, and for a lot of different reasons, they don't want to rush into having sex, or they want to wait until they're married. And so, we've got Arabic and Muslim and the Latter-day Saint, Jewish, Christian populations. Not everybody has the same value in that area, but I find that there's some really conservative values and people who want to wait and believe in waiting. So obviously this is coming from somebody who has a core value that is driving them to abstain in this area.
Right.
And they didn't explain that. But first off, I want people to, I don't know if what's coming up on my text messages.
Good job. I'm glad you're reading their mind. That's great, Elisa.
Yeah. Well, so when a text message comes in, does it show up on the recording? Are you seeing that, Colleen?
No.
Okay, so then I won't swipe them up because I worry some of the information might be coming out. But anyway, so the point is that, there are different subcultures. So, some people may mock that this is the case, or that what's wrong with this guy? Why wouldn't he want that, right? Some people may mock that, but that's just because they don't really, I don't know. This is actually more common in my work than people realize. And so, and the value of self-control, there really is a strong reason for the value of self-control in dating. We want self-control in marriage. And as a matter of fact, self-control is directly connected to my quality of life in marriage. So my partner's self-control affects my quality of life. Bottom line, debt, their raging, their uncontrolled mental health issues they're not working on, their anger management, all of those things affect their drug and alcohol use, their sexual behaviors. All of those things affect me in marriage. So when we are dating and there's not self-control, what prediction do I have of self-control when we're married? I don't have much. So keeping that in mind, there's a high value, and there's a book called How to Avoid Marrying a Jerk by John Van App. And I feel like his theories and my theories correlate really well on the stages of how to progress into a trusting relationship and when do you get sexually involved. And the research actually shows that sexual engagement early in a dating situation decreases the security of the attachment later in the relationship. So when people exercise self-control and wait, and the longer they wait for sexual engagement, The higher the statistical significance is for their security in their attachments. But the core fear about not having sex early is that we're afraid that once we get married, the person will be frigid or unavailable. So I have a cure for that. And it's really foundational. If you are with somebody who cares about your feelings, needs, and opinions, i.e. empathy, they care about your boundaries, they care about what is important to you, and they put themselves in your shoes. If they have empathy when dating and you have boundaries over where you want your sexual boundaries to be, and they respect it because whether they agree or disagree, it's your boundaries, it's your body, it's your feelings, it's your rights. So they're going to respect that because that's what empathy is. We respect the other person's feelings, needs, and opinions, and their perspective, their property, their phones, their privacy. We respect that, and their bodies. If somebody cares that much about your feelings and needs while dating, and they exercise self-control and personal responsibility to manage their own needs, if they are exercising that while dating, they'll exercise it in marriage. And so when in marriage, if I had that much care and concern for your feelings and needs and that much self-control and that much personal responsibility, and we're having sexual issues in marriage, will I probably continue to be dedicated and committed to your happiness in that area of our life too when we get married? If I was that empathetic here, I'll probably be that empathetic there. Problem with using sex to get what I want, which also happens in dating, is I can seduce somebody to get what I want, to get their commitment, their love, their approval, to get their money, to get them to take care of me. I can use sex to get what I want. And as a woman, we can seduce guys, which is, I mean, she's not really seducing him, but she's showing this, well, she's pushing the boundaries. She's showing this, this crudeness, right? And we'll talk about crudeness. That's the second part of this. She's showing this crudeness in their dating. And the problem is that when I use sex as power to get what I want when we're dating, I'm going to use sex as power to punish you when I'm not getting what I want in marriage, to get what I want from you when I do want something from you. It's a punishment, it's a reward, it's a privilege, it's something you have to earn, it's a duty, it's an obligation. There has to be a different mentality about sex in marriage and how it's a win-win. It's a gift I give myself and a gift I give you. Empathy here will be empathy there. Personal responsibility here and self-control here will be personal responsibility and self-control over here. Power and control over here will be power and control over here. If we don't see that connection, we're setting ourselves up for the repeated problems you're already trying to avoid. Okay, so that was foundational. Now let's get to the actual situation. So she's being crude, and some guys would be like, oh my gosh, that's hot, right? You know what I mean? Like they would think, oh, she's getting into it, she's saying these things. And there's a gender bias, and I'm probably going to get some hate mail on this, and you're right. There's a difference between what is right and what is effective, and how things should be and how things really are. And there is a double standard in this world, and it's not fair. And I didn't create the double standard, so I'm just here to say I see it. And then if you don't see it, great, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But here's the double standard. I hear a lot of guys who say they hate it when a girl uses the F word, but they use the F word. I see a lot of guys who want a woman to be sexual and into them, but then they don't trust and respect her, and they question her morality or her self-control. And there's a difference between the girl I introduced to my family and the girl that I just fool around with. Now, that's an old stereotype, and I realize that there's going to be arguments against this, but what he is saying in this letter is it's a turnoff for him. And he is looking for a girl who he can respect. That's what he's basically saying. And he lives a standard for that. But on the flip side, there's a lot of women who feel the way he feels, and they want to be respected. And when a guy starts talking cheap and sleazy to her, and he thinks it's a turn on, it doesn't mean it's a turn on for her. So first off, Colleen, I'm sure we're going to get some people who are going to say, some things on this, and that's okay. What are your thoughts, though, on what you're hearing?
I told you this was a dicey one, just because it's so rare to have a man say, this is this is the values that I have, for starters. It's also,
or at least it's so
also,
rare for them to be public about it.
well,
They're
he's
guys
not
who
being
feel
public
way,
about
but
it.
they're
There's
not going to
no
let
name
their
here.
yeah, exactly. There's no name. And it's rare for them to let their guy friends know. I mean, my husband spent 20 years as a firefighter. There's a difference between how guys talk in the locker room or at the firehouse or in other kind of um, blue collar jobs. There's a totally different talk, and they're not going to show in those environments this more, cultured, reserved side. They're gonna go along with the locker room chat. And that happens in the white collar scene too. It's just maybe they might try to maintain some amount of class and culture, but when they're with their friends they might talk differently. I interrupted you, Kelly. You were saying anyway.
Well, I
So
think the biggest issue, I think the reason why he explained everything that he did is he wants to know how can he talk to her and go back to the way that they were initially. How can he talk to her and let
Right.
her know this is a turnout? How can he still resolve and save this relationship?
So one of the things I love about this is that this is not what people do. They get uncomfortable, they become more silent, they judge the other person, they put up walls and barriers, they criticize, they withdraw, they don't communicate, and they make assumptions. And then even maybe because someone did something that could clearly be seen as bad, right, or rude or whatever, and then they put up a wall and they walk away and they judge and they tell other people what a terrible thing they did, but they don't tell that person. So what I tell people is, when we're looking for empathy, self-control, and personal responsibility, you cannot accurately determine somebody's ESP until you express a feeling, need, opinion, or say no. And particularly unless you tell them how you feel about what they did. Then the way that they react will reveal their empathy, their self-control, their personal responsibility. And what he's actually saying is, how can I get this back on track? Which is totally cool. Like, he is emotionally engaging. To create a secure attachment, there are 3 things you need. 6 things total that I want people to remember: empathy, self-control, personal responsibility, ESP. That's one acronym, ESP. The other 3 things of the 6: being available, responsive, and emotionally engaged. This is to help you be safe. You want to be with somebody who has ESP. To help you have a secure attachment, you can only have a secure attachment with somebody who's available, someone who's responsive to you and your needs, and someone who is emotionally engaged. Those 6 things are going to help you to have a long-term, successful, and secure relationship. ESPARE. That's how you're going to remember them with those acronyms. What is he doing? What he is saying is he wants to be emotionally engaged with her. He's willing to take enough personal responsibility to tell her how he feels. He's willing to show enough faith in her that he'll tell her. And by being emotionally engaged and communicating, he's far more likely to be able to have a secure, mature relationship with her or someone else. So this is how he says it. He starts off, I've talked about this in other videos we've talked about. You start off with a faith-based, not fear-based approach. I know, I have faith, I trust, I believe. That's how you start off a difficult conversation. You lead off with positives. I know you're a good woman. I know that we've worked through hard things before. I trust that if there was something I was struggling with, you would want to hear about it. You would want to know. I believe that we can figure this out. I know, I have faith, I trust, I believe. He can start with any of those. And then he leads into the problem. So I call it a sandwich approach. The top bun of the sandwich is you expressing those positives. I know, I have faith, I trust, I believe. Then the meat of the problem, you can express the meat. It's a small little sliver of meat. We don't overstate the problem. Don't beat them into seeing it from your perspective, because you are so right. You're going to give up being effective and you're going to prove to them exactly every time they failed. We need to keep this short. And then the bottom part of the bun is to tell them what you would like instead. So I know you're a good woman. I know you care about me and my needs, and you would not intentionally hurt or offend me. And I probably just don't understand this. So I'd like more information. I'm struggling with how, when we're making out and we're kissing, that this different element comes into our relationship where you're saying things that are more uncomfortable for me. And I don't understand it, and it takes me to places mentally and personally that are contrary to where I'm trying to be. And I really liked the way it was before, and the innocence and the fun and the goodness I was feeling before. Can you help me understand, when you're doing and saying those things, where's that coming from? Help me to understand. Let her explain it. I mean, she might have some false assumptions or some other experiences, and where she feels like this is an important piece. And maybe you'll feel different about it later, or, you might appreciate that, but right now you don't, right? So let her explain. And then the bottom bun is what you would like her to do different moving forward. Be warm, clear, and direct about what you want. That's the only way you're going to be able to judge if there was truly empathy, her ability to see it from your perspective, personal responsibility, self-control. So Colleen, what would be some examples of poor empathy responses? First off, how would you feel if someone said it to you that way?
Well, if they said it to me in the way you described it, that leaves my heart open for communication. If they lacked empathy, it was all about them, they were just assuming that it was all about them, that it was only about what they wanted, then they don't have any empathy as to what she might be going through.
Or how I might be adding to the confusion she's experiencing.
Exactly.
Because if I'm talking crude on occasion, but I'm not giving credit for the fact that me and my friends talk that way, then maybe I'm setting her up for failure, and I don't realize I need feedback, and this is her opportunity to give me feedback.
We are way past the 10 minutes on this one. I know this was a little bit more detailed one.
Yeah, let's take a few more minutes though. Let's because I want to take us to a specific resolution. What would a poor response on her part, a lack of empathy, a lack of self-control or personal responsibility look like when he's bringing it up that way? How would that look in your opinion?
Being angry and being offended. And
okay,
that kind of knee-jerk response.
Angry, offended, blaming.
Yeah, insulting them, saying, well, you're just not worldly enough for me, or you need to get with the times, or something of that nature.
I've even seen people do things where they'll insult the other person sexually, and are you gay? What's wrong with you? They'll take it really personal. Are you not attracted to me? Do you, what insulting their manlyhood, or whether or not they're female enough. You're too frigid, you're too this, you're too that. Why is that a sign of a lack of empathy? And what else could it mean if somebody says those things?
You're going to be so much better at explaining this than me guessing on this one. Seriously, I don't want to botch it. I don't want to botch it with my guessing on this one.
Right, but this is why it's difficult, because until we can start processing and thinking these things through, we start letting our mind look at it in different angles, we don't realize how much we're being manipulated. And we need to be better at feeling this out and holding people accountable and being honest and direct. So thank you for saying that. The reason why this is when somebody is insulting me, it could be coming from a place where they're afraid, they feel ashamed, and maybe they'll calm down in a little bit. But when you are insulting me and my sexuality, it's just, it's so dismissive of my feelings and needs. It's a distraction technique. It's a shaming technique. And from a manipulation perspective, if I go from one technique where I shame and demean you to another technique where I'm angry and aggressive, to another technique where I'm ready to break up with you, I'm just moving through the manipulations and punishment strategies to wear you down so that your feelings and needs aren't valid and important. Now let's go with a scenario where I said the little sandwich approach and they responded well. What would that look like? I think that one's easier, right?
Well, she could have had some misunderstanding. She could have thought that that's what was necessary. She could have thought that she needed to push things in order to be certain of how he felt. So he discovers that, and so he's more clear in his communication with her. I mean, it could be a big old honking misunderstanding.
So one, if she expresses that, she's showing personal responsibility by expressing her perspective. If she expresses it in a respectful way, she's demonstrating self-control, because I'm sure she's angry or hurt or embarrassed, and yet she's controlling her tone she's controlling what she's saying. So that's an excellent demonstration. And if she even were to say, I am so sorry, I can see where you're coming from. I felt the same way. I've wondered if you've been feeling that way, or if she were to say, well, you're really confusing because in certain ways you do this and this. So I thought it was okay, but I want to, what can I do to make it better? All of those are ways of showing empathy that his perspective was important, and then validating and supporting him. So we'll end on that note. Please check out the Lasting Love Academy. I'd be happy to help with other questions. I know we went longer on this. Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, just again, Lasting Love Academy. There's so much free content there, and they can get a better feel for just how amazing you are. I know that so many, literally thousands of people know, but if anybody's struggling with anything similar to this, you can see it's complex, but there's still some principles where you can get to that which is good and how to handle it properly. All right, thanks, Elisa.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Okay.